Hi, my name's Keith. I host a heavy metal program here in Australia called Raining Metal. I've just started up a YouTube channel. A lot of people ask me how I got into metal, so I'm just going to do some parts, a series of how I got into metal. And this is just a start. This is how I discovered this band. I was at a local markets and I looked through the cassettes in the album section. There was a cassette there that I didn't know the name. I love the name. I love the artwork on the album. So I brought a cassette, took it home, and I was actually blown away. This is the cassette I brought. Actually, this is the album, but this is the cassette that I got. Absolutely blown away just by the name and the artwork. Well, this is going to be good. And without, to my surprise, it was very good actually. Definitely my favourite song of all time on this album, Phantom of the Opera. Absolutely classic song, but all the rest are great too. Featuring the late Paul Di'Anno and Clive Burr. I was lucky enough to see Clive Burr's last gig in Sydney in 1982 on the Beast of the Road tour. And it was Bruce Dickinson's first tour with Iron Maiden. Yeah, just by finding a cassette in the local markets, because there's no internet or anything back then, I just thought, I've got to have this, and I'm glad I got it. And it wasn't till Number of the Beast that was released locally in Australia. The first two albums, this one and Killers, were actually an import until they become very popular in Australia with the Number of the Beast album. So yeah, another album. Again, I was in a local record store, went to the Aussie metal section, which back then was very, very small compared to now. And most of them were imports from overseas. But this was a local band, so I thought, again, I like the name, I love the logo on the band. I'll buy the album, and I'm very glad I did, because for a debut Australian metal album, this one is right up there. And I also got the t-shirt as well. I think it was for $25 for both. So anyway, I ended up going home with this album, Mortal Sin's debut, Mayhemic Destruction. What a great album. From that mind-chilling The Curse intro there, which sends chills up and down your spine when you hear it live, to the classic title track, Mayhemic Destruction. And this band and this album is actually 40 years. They're doing a tour this year. They've reformed, doing some Aussie dates and also some overseas dates. Great to see them go back together. If you haven't seen these guys live, go and check them out. I seen one of their first big gigs when they opened for Metallica on Justice for All tour in 1989. Or I just seen them in pubs, but to see them on the big stage certainly didn't disappoint. I'm very glad. I thought I'll take a punt and buy this album, and again, I haven't looked back. Another band, an album I won in the competition on one of our local magazines called Hot Metal. It was one of those 25 words or less. I think it was the second or third edition of Hot Metal. And I answered the questions, never heard the band. I heard of the band, but I never actually seen them live. Was Sadistic Execution. So I won this album. Had a listen to it. Very different to what I'm used to before, because I was listening to a lot of thrash at the time, and this is certainly not thrash. It's sort of my introduction with also Venom into the darker side of metal. Again, for in the competition, I would have heard of these guys eventually, but hearing this album, went out to see them a few times live. Very different live show as well, but great at the same time. I'm just glad again I entered the competition, won an album I never heard of before, and I just went on from there. And another band I heard in a record store. They were playing the album. It was released as an import. And they were playing the very first track on the album. And I thought, yeah, I've got to get this album. If I hear an album and I like it, I've got to buy it. That's just the way I am. That's the way I've always been. Because back in the day, there was no internet, so you read about these bands from overseas in magazines, or local bands, chatter around the pubs. Anyway, this is the album that was playing. The Legacy, great album. Over the Wall, what a classic song. Also, Alone in the Dark is another classic. Burnt Offerings, another great song. Again, I'm glad I heard this in the record store. I brought it and I couldn't wait to get it home. Just by reading up about the band. Well, yeah, and they're still going to this day. Was lucky enough to catch them last year, live again. Then they certainly don't disappoint live. Another band I heard of in the same record store actually, on another day, and this is like, well, wow, it's different. So of course it's different, and I read a little bit about this in magazines. This band, this is Slayer. I picked this up at the local record bar as well. Get on import. Glad I did. Songs like Black Magic, Evil Has No Boundaries, classic songs. This is way before I ever heard Raining Blood. But yeah, classic album. Got to see the band live quite a few times. Shame they're not really going anymore. They are, but they're not. But yeah, I'm glad I got this one as well. Another album I heard about in a pub actually. Went to see some local bands and they were talking about this band and this particular album. Now the bass player had left Anthrax and was in this band, and I should hear this album. And when I heard the first song, I certainly went out and brought the album. Yeah, it's Nuclear Assault. And I was happy to see their first and last tour of Australia actually. And they played this first song, Rise from the Ashes, which is one of my favourite songs of all time. Again, that's just, having a chat around the pub. Oh, have you heard of this band, read about this band? There's no internet. It's just word of mouth or reading magazines. That's how we discovered all this stuff. So yeah, I was glad I heard about this band, and I was glad I got the album. Another band I heard of. First time they come to Australia, they were a 4-piece. I got to see them up in Sydney. Then I got to see them down here in Wollongong, my local area as well. They played down here. It's one of their classic albums, Ace of Spades. What a great song. Also, We Are the Road Crew. It's the first time I ever heard a band acknowledge their road crew, which is very good to see. And the track The Hammer, you can't beat it. Shame these guys are no longer with us, rest in peace. But I still laugh at some of the quotes Len used to come out with. Not only in his lyrics, but I remember one saying in particular, if Motorhead moved next door to you, your lawn would die. I mean, that's a classic Lemmy quote. Sadly missed, but certainly not forgotten. Another band I heard about in the record store, and they weren't playing this album, but they were talking about it, and they actually had the album in stock. So I brought this Unheard. I read about them in a magazine. They were talking about it in the shop. I thought, yeah, it's got to be good. So again, I brought it on import. Cost us a lot of money back then. This band, Exodus, the debut album, Bonded by Blood. Man, when I got home and I put it on, that first song, the title track, Bonded by Blood, just absolutely blew me away. It just got better and better every time I played the album. Can't wait to see them if they come back to Australia. It'll be good. They're on my bucket list actually. But yeah, another great debut album. Another band, I started reading about Canadian bands coming out, and two bands always stuck out from Canada. It was Annihilator was one band, and this band, which I heard the title track and I couldn't wait to get the album. And I got a couple. This album was out for a while. I actually got two of their albums on the same day. This is Exciter's Heavy Metal Maniac. Three-piece band. Actually, first time I've ever heard a drummer on vocals. Three-piece band, but brilliant album. Actually, their first 4 or 5 albums are classics, but this one, when I heard the title track, well, yeah, that got me into more and more Canadian metal, which I'm glad. So it sort of broadened my horizons around the world, because again, we read about this stuff in magazines. We didn't see it on the internet. But yeah, another great album, Heavy Metal Maniac. Well, that's it for today. That's part 1. I'm going to do a few parts because I've got quite a few albums to go through that actually got me in the metal. So until then, like, subscribe to the channel. Really appreciate it. Hope you enjoyed today. And another part 2 will be up very shortly.